Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Joe Patrick on football. I am, of course, your host, Joe Patrick, Falcons insider for 92.9 The Game. And today I'm joined for the first time, the first guest on Joe Patrick on football. Mark, it couldn't be anyone else but Mark Zinno. Mark, thanks for coming on.
Joe, I mean, listen, I know you work very hard and I appreciate you. You are a man in the trenches. And when I tell you that the innovation that it took to come up with a name for this show just astounds me.
I
I
like
mean,
to say it
the-
passes legal. That's the important thing here is that it passes legal.
oh, we can't say anything about the actual NFL team uh, in Atlanta.
Can't have any copyrighted names,
Copyright
I presume.
that nature, yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, good,
Um,
great. Thanks for having me. I love talking football with you. You and I get
yeah.
to do this all the time on the phone, but now we get to do it for the public audience where we can enjoy the same laughs together. So let's do
That's
it.
right. That's right. It's like one of our little phone calls that we have in public, and it's great timing because we just had Terry Fontenot's training camp press conference yesterday. I know you're kind of the man in town who holds him to account. I think the Falcons fans look to you to be the one that kind of gets answers. Although I gotta say, yesterday we didn't really get answers. I kind of get it though. On reflecting, it's like a successful press conference for Terry Fontenot in this instance is for nothing he says to be in a headline whatsoever and to be a story around training camp. So I'll guess we'll get into some things specifically a little bit later. But was there any takeaways that you had from that presser?
I mean, I think it's good that he's keeping the conversation on the field. The less distractions you can have, the better. I think that everybody is keenly aware of this is a guy fighting for his job. I think everybody's keenly aware of that. If Michael Penix does not pan out the way we think he will, or the team underachieves and once again misses the postseason, that likely Terry Fontenot and to a certain extent, maybe Raheem Morris are gone. You can't keep going into year 5 for the head coach and year 6 for the GM, not making the postseason and go, we're good. I mean, that's Cincinnati Bengals kind of stuff where we just kind of just keep running it back over and over again and hope for different results when you're not going to get them. So I think they're all keenly aware of that. I think they're smart for keeping it on the field. The elephant in the room will continue to be, and look, you know me, you and I kind of game plan, what we want to talk about with the GM and the coach when we have these certain things. And you and I talked prior. I don't like to ask like trap questions per se.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but I did one yesterday because you knew the Kirk stuff was going to come up, and it's going to, and here's the problem,
I like this question, by the way. I know where you're going with this. I like the question.
which they don't, which they don't, and we'll dive right in here to this if you don't mind the
Mhm.
whole
That
thing.
was my next question. Yeah.
This is the biggest part of it. The Kirk stuff. What they don't realize is that it's not out of bounds to continue to ask the question,
Right.
right? Now, credit to Tori McElhaney, who covers the Falcons, because she asked the first question about Kirk and basically said, "Hey, the organization's stance since the offseason began is that we're comfortable with Kirk as the backup." And I'm paraphrasing here, but go back and listen. Is that the organization's stance still? And he totally ignored the question, did not answer. And I was in the back of the room going, so
Mhm.
I want to be like, Terry, you didn't answer her question. Answer her question. Is that the organization's stance still? But I don't like to, me, I'm like kind of, as much as people think I'm a big jerk, I'm kind of respectful to my other colleagues in the room, and I don't want to barrel and steam through a press conference because it's not a one-on-one. But so he never answered that question. And then I followed up with, to the extent of, now that the chips have fallen where they may and we've had some time to breathe, do you consider the organization's decision to sign Kirk Cousins and draft Michael Penix a success? It was a trap because I almost wanted him to say, yes, it is a success. We feel like it's a success, because we have found our starting quarterback. And wisely, he did the right thing and basically said it's too early to tell.
Right.
We don't know how this is all going to play out yet, which is the correct answer. But if he had said yes, man, it would have been headlines galore because there's no way you can define success as $100 million sitting on your bench doing nothing for you. That's
Yeah.
not success. That's failure. And the interesting part here is, and yeah, I keep telling this everybody because I was going back through it yesterday, and I say this all the time. And look, Falcons fans don't care about any of this, and I understand that. If Michael Penix is good, they don't care. about
Mhm.
anything, right? That's the transactional world that fans live in. It's not the transactional world I live in. I live in process over results. And you really have to go through a litany, and I mean a long list of piss poor wrong decisions the Falcons made to arrive at what looks like it's going to be the right decision in Michael Penix. And that frustrates me because continually making the wrong choice isn't supposed to net the most favorable outcome. And that looks like where the Falcons are headed. I mean, you have to go back. Like, let's back this whole thing up, Joe. Let me
Sure.
walk the dog here real quick. And I'm sorry for my diet.
Please. No, go for it.
When the Falcons fired Dan Quinn, at that point in time was the actual correct time to move on from Matt Ryan, wipe the slate clean, do a full rebuild. That was wrong decision number one. They held on to an aging Matt Ryan and brought in Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot, at which point in time, Arthur Smith only took the job under the premise that he thought he had 2 years of Matt Ryan because that's what was left in his contract, not one. So wrong decision number one was not dumping Matt Ryan. And I don't want to say dumping. He's the greatest Falcon in history. But I'm saying moving on from Matt Ryan. Wrong decision number two was then pursuing Deshaun Watson openly, publicly, failing to get him. Okay. Then wrong decision number three was giving away Matt Ryan for next to nothing. Wrong decision number four, okay, was then forcing Arthur Smith at the time into the unfortunate scenario where he did not have any cap room to sign any legitimate quarterback. So it was Marcus Mariota, and then forcing to draft Desmond Ridder, taking a flyer on a guy that we knew wasn't going to be that good. All we could do was hope. And I remember the post press conference scrum that we would all do with Arthur Smith. And I'll never forget him saying and looking at us going, if Ridder hits, we're going to be good. And it was the big if, and he even knew it then before Ridder even took a snap that if he hits, this is going to work. He didn't hit. So there's another bad decision in taking Ridder. Now, unfortunately, it was just a quarterback draft where there were no quarterbacks, right?
Right,
No
right.
draft panned out, but the timing of it. Then you know me, I'll be the only guy in the silent. It was a wrong decision to fire Arthur Smith, but they did. And then the wrong decision of signing Kirk Cousins to $100 million, sandbagging him, doing him dirty, and then drafting his replacement. And lo and behold, it all worked out because I think Michael Penix is going to be good.
Yeah, right, right.
That whole list of mistakes got us to this point.
With regards to the process with signing Kirk and then drafting Penix, let me ask you this from like a gambling perspective to kind of make a gambling analogy because you know you're obviously involved in this area. To me, it's like hedging. It was like hedging a bet as like the initial bet. Like the way I see it, a hedged bet is you make a bet, and then if that bet starts to go well, you basically want to insure yourself at some stage, and at which point you hedge. And this seemed like a hedge from the get-go, pretty much. It was like we're going to make two bets and kind of limit the maximum output like we ultimately get from it. And I think in this case, it would have been the best case scenario would have been to draft Penix, then you have that rookie contract for a few years to really build out the team. Is that the process issue that we're talking about? Because I generally agree with you that Michael Penix, I mean, it is too early to tell right now, but it looks like we have many more indicators that this is going to be a successful long-term solution for the team.
Yeah, I mean, like your analogy stands to a simple fact. That would be like the equivalent of let me bet the Lions and the Packers to win the NFC North. Like you don't bet them both,
right?
Because you know if I bet $100 on the Lions and $100 on the Packers, based off of what the odds are, I'm essentially breaking even, right? I might make a little bit of money if one does it more than the other, but it was too early to hedge at that point in time to do it before they've ever snapped the ball, right? Like, so that was what you were doing in a sense when you talk about the hedge. And yeah, I mean, again, it's hard for me to find some flaws in Penix's game at this point in time. Now, granted, we only have a 3-game sample set. I have more concerns about the offensive play calling in the scheme than I do about Michael Penix. I have more concerns about the coaching than I do about Michael Penix, but I have been covering this league a long time, and I've long seen bad coaching overtake good talent and cause it to look really bad. Whereas good coaching can take underwhelming talent and make it look really good.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of what, you know, we're facing here. So, you know, look, if Penix lands the way I think he lands, and I think his ceiling at this point is cracking like a top 10 quarterback position in the league within the next 2 years, right? Like he's got to get inside that top 10 area in the next 2 years. Because here's the thing, like here's the situation the Falcons have put themselves in. Let's say organizationally, Michael Penix has a 500 season, 3,200 yards, 21 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. A very mediocre year.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with Kirk Cousins as your backup? Are you cutting him in favor of a nondescript backup that all of a sudden now you're back in the same spot? If Penix doesn't hit in year 3 completely, guess what? I'm back to no quarterback on my roster, right? So you've just recreated the same scenario that the owner told the world, we will never be in that spot again where we don't have a quarterback on our roster kind of deal. You've just recreated it if you get rid of Kirk Cousins, but you can't keep him on the roster because you paid him all the money. So it's, again, a bunch of bad decisions got us to this point. If Michael Penix helps his team make the playoffs, everybody will forget about it. And I understand why, but, again, that it is a tough ask. Look, I don't think the Falcons are good enough to win the division over Tampa. I think Tampa's really good. I think that's going to be a top 5 offense again this year.
Yeah, they return every offensive starter from last year.
They have one of the best front sevens. The only weakness they have is the secondary. And they have one of the best front sevens. And I don't think the Falcons are good enough to overtake them.
Falcons have beaten them 3 of the last 4 times they played over the last 2 seasons. So they go toe-to-toe. But the problem with the Falcons, like what the Buccaneers have, is a level of professionalism and experience, having been there, done that, where they get better toward the end of the season. And the Falcons seemingly always just kind of fade away in those last 5-6 weeks.
Here's a hot take for everybody. Baker Mayfield will be a top 5 quarterback statistically at the end of the year again.
Right, again. Yeah.
He was last year. He was better than Mahomes. He was better than I think Allen. I think he was better than, with the exception of Burrow, he had more passing yards, more passing touchdowns, better completion percentage, better QBR than all those guys. So the problem is that the NFC, the middle of the end, like where the AFC is really top heavy after Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City, the middle gets pretty weak pretty quick. That's not the case in the NFC. You have, you have Philadelphia and Detroit really who are kind of at the top, but the middle of the NFC is really, really thick, and it's hard to figure out what everybody's going to be. I mean, look, if I told you right now that 3 NFC North teams made the playoffs, you wouldn't be surprised. If I told you that 3 NFC East teams made the playoffs in the Eagles, Commanders, and Cowboys, you wouldn't be surprised. So if that's the case, if one of those 2 divisions produces 3, that only leaves 1 wild card left. Right. And then you start to compete with, San Francisco, the Rams, what is Seattle, if 3 from the North make it, who's the second one from the NFC East, whether it's the Commanders or the Cowboys or the Eagles, like, you know what I'm saying? So it gets, it's tough from that standpoint for them to crack that nut and figure out a way to get in. And that's the uphill battle. And that's really the challenge, because regardless of how good Penix is, if they miss the postseason again, how can you sell it to fans that we're not making changes?
Yeah. And I think it depends on how exactly it all plays out. But yeah, I agree. It's weird. The NFL is so crazy, because even the Falcons last year, in what felt like a disastrous kind of finish for them with everything that happened with Kirk, the way they kind of fell apart, having had that big division lead, like they were literally a 50-yard field goal away from beating the Commanders in that week 16 game. That would have put them in pole position then to go and win the last game of the season and actually make the playoffs. So, anything can happen. But again, the Falcons have to be, the difference I think for the Falcons is going to be, can they actually be like charging up the hill during those final few weeks of the season where the results really, really matter. And on this topic, I kind of want to dive more into just your overall outlook for the Falcons this season. And without sounding too much of a homer, like I'm really surprised by the way that Vegas is kind of reading this Falcons team right now. They've got them, last time I saw, at 7.5 wins as the over-under projection for this team. Michael Penix, I think this line is has got to move up, but they've got him at 18 and a half touchdowns this year.
I think we're at 8.5. Oh, okay, that line. I think we're
Are
at
we
8.
at 8? Are we at 8.5 wins? Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything less than 8.5 across.
Okay.
I'll double check for you right now. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I suppose 8.5 makes more sense.
7.5. I guess 7.5 is. I mean, I'm seeing one book right now give me 7.5. It's interesting. I mean, to your point, the projections are low because, again, as it was pointed out yesterday in the press conference, hey, you haven't made the playoffs in a really long time.
Yeah,
2017 was the last time they made the playoffs. And oh, by the way, I mean, I don't know that there is a GM in the sport right now that is depending more on their quarterback to save their actual job this year than Terry Fontenot is on Michael Penix.
Yeah.
If Penix falls flat, there's nothing saving Fontenot's job. Nothing. Zero. Like they put all their eggs in this basket, even though it was at the direction of the owner, they put all their eggs in this basket, and this is what they got. And if he doesn't hit, I don't know how, again, you can justify. And listen, you know this. I like Terry a lot. I have a good relationship with him.
So do I. Yeah.
I ask him tough questions. He knows it's not personal. He understands it's part of the job. But, it'd be really hard to justify keeping him here. But I think, back to your question about the way odds makers view the Falcons. In reality, again, you got a quarterback starting who's played 3 games. It's the same reason why the Vikings numbers are depressed, because you're starting a quarterback who's never taken a snap in anger in the NFL. And in reality, again, when you look at the Falcons' track record, it's not like you're seeing, things move the needle defensively that would give you cause to believe that they can compete at a high level across 17 games. I mean, a lot of the futures markets are predicated off of past results. Again, like, this is why the Commanders are wildly overvalued. They were 6.5 wins going into last season. Now they're 10.5. You've got to get 4 wins better. That's a lot of wins to do. And again, to think the Commanders are going to win 11 games when they're not sneaking up on anybody, they won't win as many close games. They won't get a Hail Mary win. They won't have the Falcons botch the ending of that game and a kicker miss a kick to win that game, right? Like, those are wins that counted that people forget about, that they probably won't get again because there's this natural regression to the mean in close games year after year.
I got to say, I just went back and I just rewatched that Commanders game the other day while we had an off day from camp because I just wanted to watch some Penix film, and I forgot how bad the clock management was in that game. In both halves, they go into halftime, they walk into halftime with 3 timeouts in their pocket.
Listen, I would say this much. I think, to his credit, Fontenot has done all he can do to make this roster a playoff team. This coaching staff has a ton of questions.
Yeah, totally.
It's not personal, Ra.
And I feel like Fontenot takes a lot of the heat, the incoming heat from fans as to the expectations and stuff.
Well, because again, the coaches don't make the players look good.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore it looks like he's a bad player, and that's not the reality. Right? With the exception of Kyle Pitts, who doesn't seem to be a good player. The coaching, and sorry, Kyle, like, I'm going off based of what I've seen. It's, you're not the unicorn that you were proclaimed to be. We were not worthy of the 4th overall draft pick. And that was bad on the Falcons for doing it, because you don't take tight ends 4th overall because they don't change offenses. But, we'll see how that whole thing. And there was a lot of questions yesterday about Pitts too. And a lot of questions about guys going into contract years. And Fontenot, by the way, tried to play it off. We got a lot of guys going into contract years. Oh, dude, really?
Yeah, I was surprised to see his reaction there. Yeah.
And like, do you assume I'm stupid? I know I look stupid, but I just rattled off like 4 of them. Like, oh, I don't know.
Right. Yes, the names just rolled out the tongue, and he was like, "Okay, all right, so we have a few."
I'm just like, "Yeah, you got a couple." I was like, "Sorry, Terry, a few." Anyway, but that's their little, stall tactic, so we can get off the stage and away from the podium in 21 minutes. But I think, to his credit, he's done a good enough job to put this roster as a playoff roster.
Yeah,
the coaching staff has got to be better across the board.
Yeah,
there's got to be better offensive coaching. There's got to be more consistent play calling. There has got to be better execution. All of that rests on the coaching staff. Like, again, you can go back to games last year. And look, I hate to pick the scab at this wound here. But who in the world in the coaching staff didn't recognize that both Kirk Cousins and Younghoe Koo were hurt? And how in the world can you keep trotting them back out there? Like, I don't know if that came from above Raheem Morris's level, or the position coach, or or the player, or whatever, you know. But the reality is when the results aren't there, you have to make a decision as a coach. Guess what, Kirk? Can't throw outside the numbers. Not playing anymore. You're hurt. Go take a seat. Guess what, Younghoe Koo? Go take a seat. We have to get somebody else in here. I mean, that whole debacle between the two of them was the catalyst for their losing season.
Mm-hmm.
If they would have addressed those two problems the moment that they happen as a coaching staff, then they would have had different results, and I believe they make the playoffs. I genuinely do.
Yeah.
A lot of the other, and that gets underscored because a lot of the other conversations who I'm guilty of having were about philosophy and, the moves that they made and the way that they conducted themselves, when in reality, better coaching would have solved a lot of those problems in those moments within those games. And we've seen this staff botch clock management on several occasions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the clock management was poor. Right. And it wasn't just the Commanders game. There were other times where that cropped up. And I know they have like a coach or a personnel.
Goals and go for it on fourth down, the inconsistency there. They have no cogent, coherent philosophy on when to go for it, when to kick it. They've proven that they don't know how to manage those moments at all. And it causes bad football. It really does.
Yeah, Raheem hired a whole lot of extra support staff for his staff. That includes and I apologize, I forget the names off the top of my head and even their specific titles, but there's literally like a personnel there that's there for game management. He's like basically supposed to be there to advise on when to call timeouts and stuff. And to me,
they called the wrong guy.
I worry about that being too many cooks in the kitchen. And Arthur Smith was criticized for the opposite of having like an under, and I think it's just a personal preference that coaches either, they prefer to not have as many voices in their ear, or they want all the information coming in. And frankly, I think there's reason, or there's room to criticize both approaches. I think that both coaches could be criticized for those approaches.
Yeah, he should have just hired me. That would have been fine. I wouldn't screw it up. Trust me, it's not really that difficult. But well, because they try to outthink these idiots try to outthink the room. It's really not hard. And the point is that like it's one of those things where I've always kind of joked around, like game management coaches aren't made; they're just born, right? Either you have the instinct to understand what is unfolding in front of you and the ability to think 2 and 3 plays ahead in the moment, or you don't. Mm-hmm. It's a really hard learned skill. I mean, Andy Reid for years used to be maniacal about his 2-minute clock management, right? Like he would never botch that. Like in Philadelphia, it's what he was known for, being so good with managing the clock inside 2 minutes. And then you give him a Patrick Mahomes, and now look what happens, right? Like there's always points on the board with 35 seconds left, where other teams can't even manufacture that. So, I think it's one of those things where we're not talking enough about this coaching staff. The fans and the fan base get excited about the shiny little James Pierce and the Jalen Carter and, Michael Penix and the do-rag and all, like those guys can be set up for massive failure. And oh, by the way, again, it's like talk about putting all your eggs in one basket. If Pierce and Walker don't work, particularly Pierce, because of what you gave away to get him, these have got to be impact players in year one in Penix, and this is year one for Penix, Pierce, and Walker, if this team is going to have any signs of being able to make the postseason. And a lot of that falls in the coaches and the development, because look, the Falcons are not known for player development, right? Belichick was known for player development. Harbaugh's are known for player development, right? Mm-hmm. The Ravens find undrafted free agents and turn them into Pro Bowlers and all pros, right? That's not what the Falcons do. That they've never been good at that. That's a problem. It's an organizational problem.
They do it at one specific group. I can think of it that they do it pretty well, and that's on the offensive line, where you've got Ryan Newsel coming in at center. Storm Norton has turned out to be a pretty good, they've developed him into a nice swing tackle. But yeah, I agree with you. Other than that, a lot of these guys have just been who they are. And I think it's one of the reasons why they've had a lot more success with, I think, the good scouting, to be fair to them, but the pro personnel, the players that they brought in free agency who are kind of already, built players, like a Jesse Bates. Like, you add him onto the team, he's going to make a huge impact, but you're not necessarily developing, your own Jesse Bates, who was a second round pick or whatever. And it's been those second through fourth round picks, I would say second through fifth round picks, that have really not developed and left this Falcons team, I think, really talented, but just very top heavy. And if they have the wrong injuries at the wrong times, it could leave them really exposed at times.
Yeah. And I mean, look, and the other narrative that persists is that I think there's only 3 guys left from the Thomas Dimitroff era in Terrell, Koo, and Matthews, right?
Oh, right. Yep.
I think those are the only 3 left. So everybody on this roster was either acquired, traded for, signed by Terry Fontenot's staff in the time that he's been here. So there are no more excuses for Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris. I mean, they have
Lindstrom and McGarry may have also been. Anyway,
whatever it is, it's such a negligible number that it's not something that changes the construct of the roster.
Right.
So the point simply being that if they don't produce results this year, again, how do you sell to the fan base that we're going to run it back again?
Mm-hmm. And that was the other thing I wanted to mention. You talk about, they do need James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker to come in and be really impact players for this defense. And one of the reasons why they need that's the downstream ramification of having a lot of this Kirk Cousins dead money, which is that you weren't able to then go out in this offseason and acquire some of that talent that they've been really good at, going to the free agent market and being able to identify the traits that they need to make an impact on the team. Didn't have that luxury this year. So the only option, or I think the biggest lever that Terry Fontenot could pull, was to basically pull that first rounder from next year into this year and hope that player can be a big time impact player for this team.
Again, in the year-to-year league, he's got to be thinking, I don't even know if I'm making that pick next year.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm going to be the one making that pick. So why not give it away for something right now? And if the owner blessed off on it, yep, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
But again, I think the roster is good enough to make the postseason. I will forever walk into this year questioning whether the coaching staff is competent enough and good enough to translate what looks like on paper a playoff caliber roster into a playoff caliber team.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately what they are charged with. And again, it's not like I think that Raheem is a bad coach, or I mean, you and I've said this. I love Raheem, right? He's a good guy. He's a great guy. Another guy I have a very good professional relationship with, but I just don't know if he's a good coach. I genuinely, and I lean to know, because of the sample size I have.
That's where the evidence. I was going to say that's where the evidence is at this point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and
even turn around.
Even go back to Tampa. Like, he's a great guy. Players love him. Players play for him.
Mm-hmm.
Locker room gels for him.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't always mean you win ball games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, players played for Marvin Lewis for years. They didn't win any playoff games.
Yeah.
It's just it's the reality of what is. So I don't know. Again, yesterday was interesting in the sense that, I think Fontenot tries to be candid and honest with us, but there's a lot of questions. And again, it may be smart, with all these pending free agents that they got, guys who are going into contract years, organizationally, if this came down from the top, and I don't know if it did or it didn't, but if I'm the owner, I'm like, no, I don't want you signing anybody else. You want to know why? Because I don't know if you're going to be here next year.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let my new GM make that decision if that's the case.
I was making the point when I was doing radio hits over the offseason that I felt like, especially during the free agency period, that it was almost I respected the stewardship and the kind of conservatism that Terry Fontenot was showing, and not like kind of restructuring a bunch of deals, because they could have restructured more guys and opened up space for themselves. But yeah, you do wonder. I mean, whether that was his decision or not, that is kind of ultimately the route the Falcons took. I want to make one more.
I got one more thing for you too, as well.
Okay. On Raheem, I think that it's going to be important to see how Jeff Ulbrich and the defensive scheme kind of responds, because I think that if we're going to judge Raheem Morris as a CEO type of coach, he's got to be able to show an ability to identify the weaknesses that the team has schematically, and the correct coaches to go out and identify to bring in something different that can make the team better.
When Brick was hired, and I was one of the people out there when I started seeing some names. Oh, good. Not tied to the Falcons. Good. Somebody from outside the organization. And what did the Falcons do? What they always do. Default to somebody that is known and somebody that's in the organization and everything else. And they went back to, I guess, what you would call the safe play and getting Jeff Ulbrich back here. Again, not an indictment of Jeff Ulbrich as a coach. But if the defense starts out bad, watch the groaning coming from the fan base. We knew this about him. We knew he couldn't coach a good defense. This, that, and the other, yada. All those things are going to become screaming. And Ra's going to have to answer for it because Ra was the biggest proponent of bringing Jeff back to the building. It is very much a tough sledding for Jeff Ulbrich. He has very little room for error early on in the season. And if the defense starts out slow and they give up 30 in the first, twice in the first 4 weeks, there's going to be a lot of questions to answer. And again, I keep going back to the coaching staff here, JP. Like, what are they? Are they any good? We're going to find out. One more thing that we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, please.
I didn't bring it up to Terry, but I brought it up in the room with everybody else. And you know me, you can't spell kick without the word ick, because that's how I feel about kickers. But I know the kickers didn't kick yet because I said, what's going on with Koo and the other guy that they brought in here for a competition? You know me, there's nothing I hate than spending my breath on kickers because they're the worst humans alive. But it is interesting to see if it's going to be a legitimate competition, and they are looking to replace him. I know that somebody said that Koo talked earlier in the week.
Yeah, I spoke to him. Yeah, I spoke to him last week.
And they said he was pretty candid about his injury. But again, you being candid about the injury now does us no good. You should have been candid about it then.
Well, I think he was. I think, from what I understand, he was, but the team basically felt it was best to go on with him. And I think that's where the criticism that you made earlier of just like, I think they were just too slow to react to some of these situations. They probably should have gone out and gotten one of these kickers who Koo says, like, right, you're always competing as a kicker because there's always guys around the league who are trying to get a job. So you would have thought that they probably should have moved faster in that respect and sat him down earlier because for a while he was on the injury report.
3 games last year. Kicking cost them 3 games last year.
Yep.
Like, totally. You can't make it any more plain than that. So I wonder how that whole thing is going to play out. And again, the decision that they're going to make. Again, you get the feeling this is kind of what the Falcons do. We're just going to stick with Koo, even though, injury aside, the numbers have been in decline for 3 straight years. Why? Just go get somebody who makes kicks. End of conversation.
Yeah, it gets talked about every preseason and offseason, but during the season, it's obviously a huge talking point. And
here's the thing. If the Ravens can cut Justin Tucker, everybody can get cut as a kicker.
Right.
Every single one of them. If you have enough balls to sit there and cut Justin Tucker, who's the most accurate kicker in NFL history, everybody can be cut. Don't need to hold on to him. The dumb move was paying him the money that they paid him. Don't pay kickers that kind. Here's your $500K. Go away. If you don't like it, we'll get somebody else.
Yeah. It's like a 5-year contract, I think, something like that.
Stupidest thing.
Can get out of it, but we'll see how it goes. Mark, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure we will talk again relatively soon. We'll
absolutely
keep in touch and get the pulse of the team as the season progresses.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Mark.